Hey everyone, before we begin today's video, I just want to say thank you truly for all the love and support you guys gave to my last series, Wicked Nights. That series was a wild ride, full of chaos, tension, desire, and characters who were just trying to figure themselves out. Seeing how much you guys connected with every scene, every moment, every little piece of it means the world to me. But this time, things are different. This is Muted Screams. Unlike my previous stories, this one isn't loud or funny or about parties. It's quiet, heavy, it's intimate. This is a story told from the inside, about silence, exhaustion, and the kind of pain that doesn't always show on surface. It's about what happens when someone tries to keep going even when it seems impossible. Because of that, I want to make something very clear before we start. Muted Screams contain sensitive themes, including mental health struggles, anxiety, and emotional distress. These scenes are written with care, but they still can be triggering for some viewers. The reason I include trigger warnings isn't to dramatize the story, it's to respect you and give you a choice. Everyone's experience is different, and if at any moment you feel like this is too heavy, please take a break. Please take a break. Take care of yourself first. The story will still be here when you're ready. This isn't about shock, it's about understanding. It's about showing that silence can be just as loud as I scream. So, with that said, let's begin. Enjoy the show.
Yamaguchi Tadashi has always been the boy in the back row, not because he chose the shadows, but because the shadows chose him first. He grew up believing that taking up space was asking for too much, that speaking too loud was a mistake, that existing with intensity was inconvenient. So he made himself smaller, with every laugh that didn't include him, with every glance that slid right past him. He shrank a little more, until he learned a painful truth. The smaller you are, the less people notice when you shatter. His mind, once a safe place, became a locked room with no windows. The walls echo thoughts that bruise. You're not enough. They only tolerate you. If you disappeared, would anyone even notice? These voices don't scream. They whisper. And whispers, when repeated long enough, become storms. The silence he carries isn't peace. It's the weight of every word he swallowed. Instead of speaking, how do you complain about a pain that leaves no mark? How do you explain a fear that you can't even name? So he smiles. Smiles are cheap bandages, they hide the wound, but never heal it. On the outside he's steady, helpful, gentle. On the inside, he's the sound of glass cracking. One small push away from breaking apart completely. The world claps for the strong who fall loudly, but who hears the quiet collapse of someone who's been falling silently for years? He carries a truth he never asked for. Not all crying is loud, so he learned to break without a sound. And the ones you can't hear, hurt the most. 4:40 a.m. Everyone else in the world seemed to be asleep, wrapped in comfort he couldn't feel. But Tadashi lay there, eyes wide open, as if closing them meant sinking deeper into a place he wasn't sure he'd come back from. His room was a battlefield of clothes, books, papers, the physical remains of a mind that had lost its strength to keep order in anything, inside or out. He stared at the ceiling, trying to focus on something still and silent, but even the stillness felt violent tonight. His thoughts were too loud to ignore and too familiar to escape. Every breath sounded wrong. Every heartbeat felt like a reminder that he wasn't resting, just waiting for the next attack inside his own head. He kept thinking about tomorrow, how he'd have to drag this same exhausted body into school hallways. That felt brighter and louder than he could handle. How he'd have to step into the gym and pretend volleyball made him feel alive instead of exposing every crack he tried to hide. He thought about TsukkiYama, about the way his eyes caught every detail. He feared the moment those eyes would notice the things he was desperate to keep buried. And Aichi, Sugawara, Yachi, Kyoko. The caring looks. The concerned questions. The lies he'd tell again. Yeah, I'm fine. Just studying too late. He wondered how many times he could say it before his voice stopped sounding convincing even to himself. He pulled the blanket closer, not for warmth, but to anchor himself to something real before his thoughts dragged him further down. The darkest truth was simple. He wasn't afraid of the nightmare, he was afraid of the morning, because he'd have to survive all of this. Again, a thought kept tapping against his skull, sharp and persistent. How am I going to survive another day like this? School felt like a stage where everyone else knew their lines, and he kept forgetting his. Volleyball used to be the one place where he could breathe, where he could feel like his body had a purpose, like the ground beneath him was stable. But now, even the gym felt dangerous. Not because of the sport, but because of the people. He remembered those voices from years ago, the ones that dug their claws so deep that even now, in the silence of his own room, they still echoed. You're useless. You're just TsukkiYama's sidekick. Nobody would notice if you weren't here. They laughed. He pretended not to care, but the words stuck to him like stains that never washed out. Sometimes he thought about crying, about letting everything spill out in one violent flood of relief. But he knew what would happen if he started. The dam would burst, and there wouldn't be enough tears in his body to match the weight he carried. His gaze dropped to his thigh, to the marks he always hid. Shame tightened in his throat. Nobody could ever know. Not Daichi, not Sugar, not Tsuki, not anyone. He didn't want to die. He just wanted the pain to stop screaming inside of him. He pulled the blanket higher, pressing his knees to his chest, as if he could hold himself together with nothing but trembling arms. And in the middle of all that silence, the cruelest thought surfaced. Why does it feel like I'm the only one who can't figure out how to be okay? He noticed the shift before he even looked at the clock. The darkness wasn't fully gone yet, but the room had changed. A soft, gray light was leaking through the curtains, cutting across the messy floor and making the piles of clothes and scattered notebooks visible again. Even without opening his eyes all the way, he knew what that meant. Morning was coming whether he wanted it or not. His phone lay beside him. The screen was black, but he didn't need to turn it on to know the time. It would read something like 5:15 a.m., maybe a little later by now. He hadn't slept, not even 5 minutes. He had spent the entire night fighting thoughts he never asked for and feelings he couldn't control. Every attempt to relax only dragged him deeper into that heavy, burning awareness that tomorrow was waiting, loud, bright, demanding. The idea of school felt unbearable. Hallways full of people pretending not to stare, conversations he would struggle to follow, the constant pressure to act normal. Then volleyball practice. Everyone pushing themselves, everyone watching him if he messed up. Tsuki's eyes catching any mistake, Daichi's soft concern, Sugura's gentle questions, Hinata's and Kageyama's energy. All of them reminders that he wasn't as invisible as he wished, but also not understood enough for it to feel safe. He rubbed both hands over his face, trying to chase away the sting behind his eyes. Crying would probably help, but he couldn't. His tears felt stuck somewhere deep, blocked by the fear that if he started crying, he wouldn't be able to stop. He stared at nothing for a long moment, his breathing uneven but quiet. He didn't want to wake anyone. He didn't want to explain anything. Soon, the alarm would ring. Soon, he'd have to get up and pretend he hadn't spent the night unraveling quietly. He'd force a smile, splash water on his face, maybe joke around if someone made the effort. He'd lie. It was easier that way. Easier than admitting he was tired of hurting like this. The room was getting brighter by the second. He pulled the blanket over part of his head, not to sleep, because that was no longer an option, but to delay the moment he had to become someone else. Someone okay. Someone functioning. Someone who didn't feel like he was drowning in silence. Another day was beginning, and he wasn't ready for it. He forced himself out of bed before the alarm could scream at him. Moving felt like walking through mud, every step heavy and slow, but staying still hurt worse. He grabbed a towel and slipped quietly into the bathroom, closing the door with the smallest sound possible, as if silence might protect him from falling apart again. The water took a moment to warm, and he stood there staring at the tiles, cold air prickling his skin. When the stream finally hit him, he let his head fall forward under the spray. Drops ran down his face in thin, uneven trails, the closest thing to tears he could manage. He ran his fingers through his hair, more out of habit than care, and then he began to wash, much, too fast, too strong, as if scrubbing hard enough could remove the sadness clinging to his body. His hands moved aggressively over his arms, his shoulders, his chest, desperate, angry, exhausted. He was trying to clean something that wasn't on his skin. With every rough motion, he hoped the emptiness would peel away, that maybe he'd feel lighter afterward. But the deeper he pressed, the more he realized that nothing was changing. His breath hitched, not quite a sob, just a painful reminder that the feeling inside him wasn't going anywhere. By the time he reached for the soap again, his skin was already turning red in places. He forced himself to slow down before he crossed a line he promised himself he wouldn't cross again, not like this, not with this motive. He shut off the water quickly, afraid that if he stayed there any longer, he'd do something he'd regret. He stepped out, steam fogging the mirror. He wrapped the towel around his waist, trying to avoid looking at himself, but his eyes drifted anyway. And there they were, the marks. Faint in some places, newer in others. Lines he traced with his gaze but never with his fingers, because touching them made the guilt worse. Angry reminders carved into his thigh, reminders of nights like this one, when silence felt too heavy and his thoughts pressed too hard. He swallowed, a sharp burn catching in his throat. No one could ever know about those. No one. He wasn't trying to die. He just wanted the pain to shut up. Just for a minute. He tore his eyes away from the mirror, heart pounding much faster than it should. He dried his hair quickly, refusing to look back at the reflection waiting behind him. He had to hide the evidence again, hide everything, before the day started, and he had to pretend he was just fine. He got dressed quickly, making sure his shorts and uniform fit just right so nothing underneath could ever be noticed. He checked twice, maybe 3 times. Then he grabbed his phone. It was easier to act okay if he started early, pretend long enough and the mask would finally stick. He opened his chat with Tsuki. His fingers moved faster than his mind. Good morning, Tsuki. Ready for school? We got a crush practice today. I was thinking I could work on receives again today. Maybe you could help me later? He added a smiling emoji. Then another. He always used too many emojis, like they could balance the weight of everything he didn't say. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. It's 6 in the morning. Yamaguchi felt his face warm. He typed quickly again, still smiling at the screen, a smile that hurt. Haha, yeah, I woke up super early. I'm super excited today. There was nothing exciting about today. He hoped Tsuki couldn't read that between the lines. A long pause. Then finally, if you show up tired and miss receives again, I'm not covering for you. Tadashi stared at the message a little too long. His chest tightened, not from anger, not from surprise, but from how easily the truth curled beneath the surface. Tsuki didn't know anything was wrong, and Tadashi preferred it that way, so he kept up the act. I promise. Today's gonna be a great day. His thumb hovered over the keyboard, wanting to add more, wanting to say, please don't look too closely. Instead, he locked his phone and shoved it into his pocket. Tsuki was right. It was too early to feel this tired, too early to be this good at pretending. Yamaguchi had just slipped his phone into his pocket when it buzzed again. He pulled it out quickly, his heart gave a tiny jump, the kind of reaction hope creates before it knows it shouldn't. Are you gonna come to dinner here tonight? He blinked at the screen. The message felt softer than usual for Tsuki. Not warm, just neutral. Direct. But for Yamaguchi, it was enough to make something flutter in his chest, something dangerously close to happiness. He remembered yesterday, Akitoru showing up after months away, smiling wide, ruffling Tsuki's hair while Tsuki tried to swat his hand away. The ride home full of small talk and soft teasing. Akitoru casually inviting him for dinner tonight, saying it'd be nice to have him over again. Tadashi had smiled. Of course he'd said yes. He always said yes. But now, this morning, in this state, he stared at the message, thumbs still. He wasn't sure he could keep the mask on an entire evening. He wasn't sure he had enough energy left for pretending. But he also didn't want to disappoint Tsuki, or Akitoru, or anyone. Yeah, of course I'm coming. I wouldn't miss it. Tell your brother I said thanks again. He added another exclamation point. Then 2 more. As if excitement typed loudly enough could drown out fear. Typing bubble. Pause. Typing bubble again. He bought that melon soda you like. Yamaguchi froze, eyes softening. That small detail, someone remembering something he liked, it shouldn't have hit this hard, but it did. He swallowed, fingers still shaking from the shower and the lack of sleep. Really, that's awesome. Thank you, Tsuki. He hesitated, almost sending a heart emoji. Almost. Instead, he locked his phone again. He stood there, towel still around his neck, staring at the foggy mirror like it was someone else's face looking back. Someone he was trying really hard to become. Someone Tsuki wouldn't hate having at his house. Dinner tonight. A reason to push through the day. A reason to keep breathing. But the worst part was knowing that even the small good things felt like a test he wasn't sure he could pass. The air outside was colder than he expected. He hugged his bag closer to his chest as he walked, eyes focused on the ground. The city was waking up, cars passing by, people heading to work, a world full of movement he didn't feel part of. He stopped at a small convenience store on the way. The bright lights inside made him wince as he grabbed the first energy drink he saw, the strongest one he could find, promising focus and stamina in neon letters. He placed it on the counter without a word, paid, and dropped it into his backpack. He didn't touch it. The can felt heavier than it should, like drinking it would be admitting he needed help to simply exist. And he wasn't ready to admit that. Not even to himself. As he approached the school gates, he took a deep breath. Students all around greeted friends, laughed, complained about homework. Yamaguchi kept his eyes forward, walking quietly through the noise. Hinata and Kageyama were already arguing about something, probably volleyball. Yachi stood nearby, trying to mediate with her usual nervous optimism. They didn't see Tadashi, but even if they had, it wouldn't have been strange. He was always quiet in the mornings. Always just tired. No one questioned it. He slipped into his classroom and took his seat by the window, his usual spot. The sunlight touched his desk gently, warming his arm. It made him want to close his eyes, just for a minute. The teacher's voice felt distant. The world softened. Everything blurred. He didn't mean to fall asleep, but his body didn't ask for permission. When he woke again, it felt like seconds had passed, but the clock disagreed. 10:03 a.m. 3 entire periods gone. He hadn't learned a thing. Hadn't spoken a single word. A dull buzz vibrated in his pocket. Yamaguchi didn't check. His head rested against his hand, eyelids heavy again. His heart pounded in his ears, loud enough to drown out the classroom chatter. His muscles ached, not from movement, but from holding himself together all night. He stared at the energy drink inside his bag. Still unopened. Still useless. Just like him, or at least, that's what his brain kept insisting. He sighed quietly and straightened his back, pretending to look at the board, pretending to care, pretending to function. One period at a time. One breath at a time. He only had to survive a few more hours until lunch. Then volleyball practice. Then dinner at Tsuki's house. He could make it. Right, but first, he couldn't let himself drift off again. One more missed period and someone would notice. Someone would ask. Someone would look at him with those eyes he couldn't handle, the ones that tried to understand. No, he needed to get at least one thing right today. He needed to stay awake. He needed to pretend he was still fine. His hand slipped into his backpack and found the cold metal of the energy drink can. For a moment he just held it, feeling the chill against his palm like a reminder that he was still here, still real, even if everything inside him felt unreal and heavy. He pulled it out quietly, hoping the sound of the aluminum brushing against his books wouldn't draw attention. The bright design on the can mocked him with promises of focus and energy in bold letters. He pressed his thumb under the tab. Click. The soft hiss of carbonation escaping filled the tiny space around him. He hesitated. He always hated the taste, too artificial, too sweet, too sharp. But if it kept his eyes open, he'd drink 10 of them. He took a sip, then another. It burned a little going down, waking up nerves that didn't want to wake up. He placed the can carefully on the edge of his desk, close enough to grab, far enough to pretend he wasn't relying on it. The teacher continued talking. He didn't catch a single word, but the caffeine started crawling into his system, leaving a restless feeling buzzing under his skin. His heart beat faster, not with excitement, but with a discomfort that felt halfway between panic and adrenaline. Maybe this was good. If his chest was busy racing, his mind couldn't collapse into sleep again. He straightened up, eyes fixed on the board, trying to look like he cared. His leg bounced under the desk. His fingers tapped. His breathing changed rhythm. He was awake. Not well, but awake. It was something. It counted, didn't it? The caffeine hit too fast. His leg bounced constantly under the desk, the anxiety rising like a tide. The classroom noises, pencils tapping, whispers, chairs moving, all felt sharper, too close, too loud. It was like the volume of the world had been turned up without warning. He gripped the edges of his desk, knuckles whitening as he tried to look focused. His heart was racing so hard it felt like it was trying to escape his ribs. Wake up. Stay awake. Don't fall apart. Not again. His head dropped into his hand for support, the room swaying for a second. He blinked hard, swallowing the sudden dizziness. The energy drink wasn't giving him energy, it was giving him instability. His thoughts felt scrambled, his body half asleep, half out of control. He stared at the board, trying desperately to follow the lesson. He couldn't. The words didn't connect. Nothing made sense. He could feel the crash coming, the exhaustion pushing back twice as strong, like his body was asking why he was forcing it to stay alive when it clearly wanted to shut down. He wasn't sure if he was sweating from the hot classroom or the panic. Then a voice cut through the noise. "TsukkiYama, is the hallway more interesting than my board?" Tadashi stiffened. He hadn't realized Tsuki was watching him. TsukkiYama had been turned in his seat, eyes narrowed behind his glasses, studying Tadashi, not the board. There was something sharp in his gaze. Not annoyance. Not anger. Concern. But the frustrated kind, the kind Tsuki never said out loud. Caught, TsukkiYama rolled his eyes back toward the front with a sigh. "No, sensei. Sorry." The entire class chuckled quietly. The teacher moved on. Eyes shifted away, and Yamaguchi disappeared again. His heart sank, deeper than before. Because for 1 second, someone saw him, and the world punished that person for looking. He felt the sting in his chest, like he had just missed a chance to be noticed before vanishing back into silence. His legs stopped bouncing. Now he sat completely still, afraid to draw attention, afraid to keep any of it. He stared at the desk with a hollow expression, every thought folding inward. I can't even be good at staying invisible. 1 hour until lunch. 1 hour of pretending he wasn't falling apart. The clock ticked louder than the teacher's voice. Each second stretched like it was mocking him, slow, dragging, endless. He couldn't tell if the heat in his chest was panic or caffeine. Probably both. The words on the board had long since stopped meaning anything. They were just moving shapes. He wrote something in his notebook anyway, a half sentence, a broken line, just to pretend he was still here. He could feel the exhaustion waiting at the edge of his body like a wave, ready to pull him under the moment he stopped pretending. Someone dropped a pencil. The sharp clack against the floor made his stomach twist. It shouldn't have been that loud, but it was. It echoed, louder and louder, until it filled his entire skull. He flinched. No one noticed. He pressed his nails into his palm, harder, deeper, until it hurt. Good. Pain meant focus. Pain meant something was real. When the bell finally rang, it felt like an explosion. Too loud. Too sudden. Everyone moved at once, chairs scraping, laughter rising, and he sat frozen, waiting for the world to stop shaking. He hadn't written a single thing that made sense. His hands were trembling, but the drink was gone. Lunch, noise, people. He didn't know if he could handle all that pretending again. Still, he stood up. Because that's what he always did, even when his body begged to stay down. He left before the teacher even finished dismissing them. Bag half-zipped, steps uneven. He didn't look at anyone. Didn't have to. He could feel their chatter closing in behind him, the hallway already too bright, too loud. The bathroom door shut with a hollow echo. Silence. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a weak hum that drilled straight through his head. He locked himself in the farthest stall. His pulse was everywhere, in his temples, his throat, his fingertips. He pressed his back against the cold tile, breathing like the air was too thick to move through. His reflection in the metal lock stared back, blurry and pale. Eyes ringed in gray, lips dry. He looked sick. He felt worse. He sat down on the closed lid and hid his face in his hands. The smell of bleach burned his nose, but it was better than hearing his own heartbeat. A drop of water fell from the ceiling, or maybe it was his own sweat. Didn't matter. All he could think was, don't let anyone walk in. Not Tsuki. Not Hinata. Not anyone. because he didn't know what they'd see if they did. He wasn't sure there was anything left worth seeing. He counted his breaths until they stopped sounding like panic and started sounding like nothing at all. He splashed water on his face. Cold, sharp, like punishment. His reflection didn't look alive, just tired. Eyes red, skin too pale, hair sticking out where he'd dragged his hands through it. He tried to fix it, ran wet fingers through his bangs, pinched his cheeks for color. Didn't help. Just made him look more like someone trying too hard to look fine. What do I even say? He whispered. His voice cracked. The sound startled him. He imagined lunch, the usual table, the noise, the laughter. Hinata asking too many questions. Kageyama squinting, blunt and honest, you look sick. Yachi worrying out loud, maybe offering to take him to the nurse. And Tsuki wouldn't say much. Just that quiet look again, the one that saw too much. He couldn't handle that look again. So he rehearsed a smile. Tried a few lines under his breath. Didn't sleep much. Headache, that's all. Forgot breakfast. Excuses. He collected them like armor. But then he thought of practice, and sugar. Sugar always saw through armor. He didn't stare the way Tsuki did, he felt. One glance, one soft "You okay, Yamaguchi?" and everything cracked open. Tadashi gripped the edge of the sink. He couldn't fall apart there. Not in front of everyone. Not in front of him. He took one last look at himself. Still awful. Still not convincing. But he smiled anyway, the kind that hurt his cheeks. See, you look fine, he lied to himself. And left before he could stop believing it. The door creaked open. He was supposed to slip out quietly, blend back into the hallway before anyone noticed he'd been gone. But the universe never made it that easy. Because right there, about to walk in, was Kageyama. They froze. Both of them. Oh, Tadashi blurted, too fast. Hey. His voice came out higher than he meant. Kageyama blinked, frowning like he was trying to solve an equation. Yamaguchi, you okay? The question hit harder than it should have. Yamaguchi laughed, short, fake, awful. Yeah, just needed to wash my face. Long morning. Kageyama kept staring. That flat, too honest stare. Your eyes are red. Yeah, allergies. Tadashi lied quickly, gesturing vaguely. You know, dust, chalk, whatever. Kageyama didn't answer. He looked like he might ask something else, but then a group of second years passed by, loud and laughing, and it broke the tension just enough for him to shrug. Okay, he said finally, stepping aside to go in. Lunch is almost over. Hinata's been yelling your name. Right, I'm coming. Yamaguchi walked away fast, heartbeat hammering. The hallway felt too long, the air too heavy. He could still feel Kageyama's stare on his back, like the boy knew there was something wrong, but didn't have the words to reach it. Yamaguchi tries again to tell himself that he'll be okay. He just has to make it through this, just one more day. One more normal school day, like any other. He repeats it until it almost sounds true. Classes, practice, dinner at Tsuki's house. That's all. He can survive that much. He forces a small breath, shoulders heavy, eyes fixed on the floor as he walks. I'll be okay, he thinks. He has to be.